Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Nikhil Brahmbhatt, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
I guess we should mention that you and I work together at what we've referred to on this podcast as the bakery a few times, but the name of the company is Capital One. And you and I were there together for a long time.
Long time, yeah. I do remember the first time that we met. I'm not sure whether you remember.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember this.
So I think it was post. There was this big project called Helix, right? So, and then you were coming.
Was that 07?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
06, 07, 08.
Yeah.
And I think you were coming back from some sort of long leave, or you went back to sort of.
I had deployed overseas.
Deployed overseas, yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
And then I think we were sitting in this one big conference rooms.
Okay.
And there was big table. You were sitting in the center, and I
was it at West Creek?
Yeah, West Creek.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I was sitting in the corner of that table. And I think you were director at that time, and I was manager.
Okay.
And somebody referred to me as Nikihl, right?
Right.
And then you jumped in and said, "Oh, so you are Nikihl."
Kind of abruptly and rudely.
No, I think it was all good. He said, no, you were hearing my name in all different conversations and meetings, so now I know who we are.
Yeah.
Right.
I heard your name a lot before that. But were we in the same department then?
I think you were, if I remember correctly, you were starting to manage JRC at that time. And then I was in this program management, sort of staff function type of role.
Where the smart people were. You are a very bright person. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later. All right, let's start from the beginning. You were born in India.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
All right, so where were you born in India?
I was born in a small town called Kalol, which is about 1 hour drive from a bigger place called Ahmedabad. So that's where I was born. But I actually was not brought up in Kalol. So my father was superintendent in customs. So he had transferable jobs. So I think when I was 6 months, then he left that place and went to all these different places. And then we ended up in a place called Ahmedabad or city, Ahmedabad city. And education was really, really important in the family, right? So then after that, once we came to Ahmedabad, after that, my father was transferred to other places, but we as a family, decided to stay in, live in Ahmedabad, right? Just because of better education and everything.
So when you were really small, you moved around quite a bit.
We did.
Every few months kind of thing?
I think it's every maybe year to 2 years.
That's a lot of moving.
Yeah, a lot of moving.
Is that common for people in India to move around
Not
that much?
necessarily. I think most of the people live in one place majority of the time. Now things are different just because of all this different types of jobs and everything.
Right.
But when I was growing up, majority of the people lived in one city or one place. But just given my father's job was more transferable, we moved around, so.
But at what age had your parents said we're not going to move the kids anymore?
So when I was, let me think about that. So I was I think I was 8 years old, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
We said education is important, these are good schools. And I was the youngest in my family. So I had 2 sisters and 1 brother. So my eldest sister is 9 years older than me. So that means she was in 17, 18 range. So
right.
That's why consideration for my older siblings, my parents decided that we are just going to live in Ahmedabad and focus on studies. And my father would still go to different places, but then he would come back and then we would go there and when holidays and things like that, right?
So your dad was gone 4 or 5 days a week, or he'd be gone for weeks at a time?
Oh, weeks at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's hard for your mom.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely hard, So, but we stayed in touch all the time. So he would suddenly come home type of thing, surprise us, and very well connected, very close knit family. But we are still trying to figure out some ways so that he can still work in different places and we don't have to move around, right? So
right. So my impression of you growing up is you ate, slept, and studied, or attended class. Is that accurate?
Not necessarily. So actually, I studied hard. but I was not like one of those studious types, basically, right? So
Maybe that's why I like you so much.
thank you. Because and I think like I think what I figured out like early on, my technique was like just pay close attention in the class and study regularly, so that I don't have to like spend like a lot of time studying.
Right.
So studying is not something that like I truly enjoyed, but I thought it was like really, really important, just given like what my parents drilled down into me. So I have to like make that as a priority, but doesn't mean that like I have to spend like all of my time there. I spend like a lot of time like just playing cricket.
Okay.
So
So be consistent and disciplined around it, and you don't have to spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to catch up.
Exactly. I was like paying like as much attention in the class. So this may sound like ridiculous, but let's say I'm like in the exam, and I'm like writing some answer, and if I forget something, I can actually like in my mind replay that lecture or class and find the answer, basically.
That's uncommon.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know other people that can do that?
I've not seen that, but I was able to do that. So
I'm
not
so
sure,
you
like,
really needed to go to class.
yeah, I needed to go to class. I go to class like that's like first and foremost.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you remember like the smell of the room? Do you remember, or is it just you can see the lecturer, you can see your teacher, and you remember what they said?
Yeah, exactly. I can visualize my teacher, basically, right? So
and you're getting video and audio back from your recall.
exactly.
That's crazy. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, exactly.
So that helps at work too, right?
Yeah, it does. But I'm not sure like I'm still able to do it or not that effectively. So
Well, we do age and things
yes,
happen. Yeah.
exactly.
All right, so you mentioned cricket. So we'll come back to cricket in a second. Were there other things that you did outside of the home or outside of the classroom?
Yeah, so cricket was big thing, and then all like cultural activities, right? So there's a event called or the festival called like Navratri, so 9 nights. Where like every night like people get together and like dance and like food and celebration and all of that. So I did that like very religiously every year, and actually I've been doing that like since then, even now. And very recently we had that festival, and my wife and I got like the best dance couple ever.
All right, nice. And this is not just 20 people showing up. This is a big gathering.
Yeah, 500, 600 people.
Yeah,
showing
wow.
up,
Good for you. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah. So playing cricket like all the time, and then like doing like this cultural activities type of thing. So there was a time period where I would just come home for like eat and sleep type of thing, and spending like time all the time outside, basically.
Yeah.
Right? So
All right, so let's dive into cricket.
okay, awesome.
You know me, I don't know anything about cricket other than I can name a couple of things. Describe cricket to somebody who doesn't understand it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So cricket is like so in baseball there are like 4 different bases, right? So in cricket, like the way to think about it, like there are two bases like opposite each other.
Yep.
And at each base it's called like wicket, basically. So there are like 3 wickets, which are like 3 sticks basically at each one, and then there is a bowler who is like similar to pitcher,
right?
But then like the way it works is like you cannot throw the ball, you have to move your hand in circular motion, basically.
Not bend at the elbow.
Not bend at the elbow, right? And then the other thing is like the ball does not go directly to the other person. It actually hits the ground first and then comes up, basically, right? So that's where like what you can do is like different things in the ball. After it pitches, it goes to like different directions and things like that. You can do like swings and other things.
It's 360. The people that are playing outside of the batsman and bowler relationship, everybody outside of that can be in any direction, right?
Yeah, it's like 360 basically. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
All right, so cricket's notorious for going for 2 days or several hours. How does one score in cricket?
Yeah, so like every ball that you get, like you try to hit it, right? But if you don't hit it, like that does not mean that now it's just 0 runs on that. Like you don't necessarily have to hit it. But when you hit, like once you hit it, it goes into the ground. Then you run between those wickets, basically, right? So you score a number of runs.
So if I run to the far wickets
It's
and return, that's 2 runs.
That's 2 runs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I keep doing it until
Keep doing it. Yeah.
why would I stop running?
Yeah, so let's say if the ball comes back to the wicket before you go back to the wicket, then it's called like out. So you're done basically.
Okay.
Right. So your goal is to like run as many, runs as possible between the wickets, and go back to that wicket before the ball comes back to that wicket basically.
And does it just have to be the ball back to the wicket, or does somebody on the other team have to possess the ball at the wicket?
Yeah, it actually has to like possess the ball and then hit the wicket basically.
Okay.
Before you come back.
Got it. Okay. And then is there a ring around the field?
Yeah, and then like let's say if your ball like, go directly to that ring outside.
Yeah.
So it's like called like 4 run.
Oh, it's basically like a home run.
Yeah, and then like if it touches the ground and then go outside, then it's 4 runs. If it does not touch the ground, go directly outside, that is 6 runs, which is
so everybody's trying to hit 6 runs.
Yeah, everybody's trying to hit that.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good.
So when one team is on offense, they're the batsman side. Are they going through the entire team before the other team becomes the batsman?
Yeah, and so that's where like you were mentioning about the format comes into the picture.
Yeah.
So like let's say that there's one format called like it's like test match. It's like 5 days.
like 8 hours a day for 5 days.
It's like office time. Like you go over.
It's like a work week.
Yeah, work week. 9 o'clock you start running, and then there's like lunchtime period, like about like 45 minutes, and then you go back and run.
Wow.
And then play cricket. That goes on like 5 days, and then there's like one rest day. Right? So like total thing is like 6 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so if you're playing test match, then one team goes first, and then like one after the other, like everybody goes. There are like total 11 players. So there are like 10 wickets, because like if the person is on one side, like he cannot run like on the only one side. Like there has to be like people on both sides.
Right.
So they run like one after other, and then like once all of them are out, then the next team comes in, or once they are all out, then the first team comes in, so on and so forth. Right.
And so how many times do you have a full set like that, or like an inning in baseball? How many innings?
Yeah, total 4 sets.
Okay.
2 each for one each team basically.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
Team A comes in, then team B, then team A comes in, and team B. Like so, there are 4 sets basically.
Got it. And that can take how long does that typically take?
5 days. So sometimes like 5 days are over, and that whole thing is not done. So it's like draw. Nobody won after 5 days.
That seems crazy.
Yeah. It's like that's why like not many people play test matches these days. And then there is another version which is like it's called like single day cricket, right? So daily matches. So in which there is one over means like you are throwing balls like 6 times, right? So there are like 50 overs, so like 300 times you are throwing the ball. So there's like team 1 and team 2 both come to like for offense like once. So and then see like what happens, like who scored like more number of runs, and that team wins basically. Okay. Right? So there's always like no winner there. Like majority of the time there have been cases where there are ties even then that situation, but in like that one day matches. And now there are like even shorter matches. It's like just the 20 over matches, right? So that is over in like 3-4 hours basically.
Well, you need a short match if you want to televise, right?
Yeah.
To get the optimal audience or the maximum audience.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine unless you're there and you know somebody on the team, or it's one nation against another nation. I get why people would show up for 6 days for that.
Yep.
But outside of the national thing, I think the 3 or 4 hour thing is much more consumable for a TV audience.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why like there's a league started. This started like 10 years ago. But like all of those matches are like those shorter form, right? So that's why like it's like 3-4 hours. Everybody goes there, enjoys it, and then like come back.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But the only thing is like if you really like cricket, then there is like balance between like you want to like save your wicket, and then you also want to make the runs. So if you are like truly on like 5-day test match, then there is no so much hurry to do the runs, right? And then if you are like one shorter version, like 3-4 hours, you don't care too much about the wicket. Like you are going after the runs because you have like 10 wickets to spend to make as many runs as you want. And then but I think the middle ground is there, like that one day, in my opinion, right? Just because like that's like the trade-off that you are trying to balance, which is I want to score runs, but I don't want to like lose my wicket, basically.
And you're saying you prefer the one day. You're saying that as a player, or are you saying that as somebody who's watching?
Oh, as a player. Yeah, for anybody watching, there like 3-4 hours is the one that they like. So.
That makes sense. Okay. Do you enjoy being the batsman, or do you enjoy being on the other side?
Actually, both. So I used to be bowler. So I was like a unique combination where, in the sense that like I was a left-hand bowler. There are not many like left-hand bowlers, and then I was playing like right-hand basically. So I was playing all the time. I took like coaching in India. There are like coaching classes. So on crickets I did that, and I was in under 19 team for like the city and all of that. Right?
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And everybody like in different communities. We call it like society, right? So they knew about like how good the player I was, so they would come and like say, "Can you play for my team? Can you play?" For
that's
team?
cool.
Yeah. So
all right, nice. So you bowled left-handed as a batsman. You were right-handed.
Right-handed.
Okay,
yeah.
and as a bowler, can you put spin on the ball?
Yeah. So I used to be like fast bowler. So there are like two types of bowlers. So one is like fast bowlers, and the one is like spin bowlers. So spin bowlers are like they don't run that much, but their focus is more on like spin. Like once it hits the ground, then it just takes like a big turn basically, right? But in the fast bowling also, there's a way to like spin it. So like when you actually throw the ball, if you move your fingers like slightly on the left hand side, then it's going to after the pitch it's going to go outside.
Right.
If you move slightly on the inner side, then it's going to come in basically, right? So you do like different things.
So if you were a bowler, do you have to be a spin oriented bowler or a fast, or can you combine the two?
I think like there are bowlers that have combined the two, but majority of the time it's like one versus other, right? Because if you're a fast bowler, you're running and you're focusing a lot more on throwing faster with some slight twist to that, right? And a swing to that. Versus if they're a spin bowler, then that is not so much focus on the speed, but you want to make sure that once it hits the ground, it's taking big turn, and big and unexpected turn basically, right? Because if you're a batsman, you know that they are going to swing it and spin it and things like that, right? And they pay a lot of attention to the hand movement while they throw. So that means that they know which way the ball is going, but then bowlers also try to figure it out so that their hand movement does not give out which way the ball is going to move.
Yeah, deception's important for the bowler.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So the bat itself is not like a baseball bat. It's not flat though either on both sides, or is it?
No, I think in the front side it is a little bit of flat. On the back side it is not.
Okay.
So the front side is flat. So you hit the ball, and at the same time you try to move that into or send that into specific direction, right? So let's say the bowler is bowling, so that means that there are other 10 players who are in the field around in 360 view,
right?
So before the bowler starts, you make sure that you understand where everybody is standing, and you find gaps basically, right? So you use your bat, and it is flat in the front. You have the opportunity to put a stroke in the specific direction. So while those fielders, we call it fielders, go after the ball, you can run in between the wickets basically.
So when you're batting, are you swinging fully like you would in baseball, or is it more of the difference between bunting and swinging in baseball? Pretty dramatic. My sense is in cricket, it's not quite a bunt. It's also not quite a full swing most of the time.
Exactly, yeah. So it truly depends on whether you want to hit for home run or six basically, right? So if you are hitting for home run, then you will hit the full swing basically, right? But then there are also situations where you put it the small cut basically, right? It goes into different direction,
right?
So it truly depends on the ball, right? So you try to as soon as the bowler throws, you try to figure it out as to which way it is going to move. Then also they throw it at different lengths, right? So if they throw it middle of the wicket, then you know that ball is going to bounce basically, right? So it's going to in one, or if they throw all the way close to the wicket, then it's going to no more defensive shot that you want to take basically, right? So you have to make that decision in a split second, right? So
yeah,
figure it out. So
all right, so India has always had in your lifetime, India's had a good national team, a really good national
Yes,
team.
yeah.
Who are the other good nations at cricket?
Yeah, so like when I was growing up, West Indies Islands was like very very a strong team. So every 4 years there is a World Cup. So it started like the first World Cup was won by West Indies. The second one was also won by West Indies, and the third one, the team was so strong. This was like 1983, and India was in the finals against West Indies. And at that time, everybody thought that West Indies going to win, but it was a big upset that India won the World Cup, the third World Cup.
India as a nation must have gone crazy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. There are like movies on that. And
That's awesome.
yeah. And
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent for America. I guess when we beat the Russians in hockey around the same time frame, it was similar to that.
Right, yeah. And then I think like Australia is good. Like, so there now the time period is like the different teams are good at different time periods. So Australia, England, they have won the World Cup. Pakistan won the World Cup also.
So a lot of places where the British colonized.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Americans are somewhat proud that cricket's not a big thing here.
Yes.
That's cool. So are there world rankings that are out all the time or just during the World Cup season?
I think during the World Cup is mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly world.
Do the countries compete when the World Cup's not happening?
Oh yes, they do. So I think the countries visit each other for different series, and that goes on all the time. So
Did you have a dream of playing on the national team?
yeah, I actually did. So when I was in 8th, 9th grade, I actually had to make the decision about whether I want to continue to focus on cricket or study basically, right? So and I decided I'm going to focus on studies basically, right? So at that time there are not many professional leagues or anything like that, so
Right.
it's out of billion people, if 11 people get selected, right? So
Yeah. The odds are not in your favor.
exactly.
Yeah, and so if you wanted to try to make the national team, you wouldn't drop out of school, but school would have been secondary.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Who won the last World Cup?
Forgetting.
Yeah, it's all good. But India has a good chance every time they play.
Every time. Yeah. Every time.
There's one coming up next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did the math from 83 to
Oh yeah.
23.
That's awesome.
I added 40 to 83. It took me a while to use my fingers and my toes for that, but yeah.
Yeah, I try to keep up with it, but I've not been able to do that as much. So
Do you play in Richmond?
I have not, but I think starting from next spring, I'm going to start playing. So I found some groups that are playing on regular basis. So I'm thinking next spring I'll start playing. So
Were you part of the effort where we went out to the softball field at West Creek?
I was
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was actually awesome.
Yeah,
That was really awesome.
The people that didn't understand cricket, I mean, we just looked ridiculous.
No, that was good. I think.
And I was bending my arm as a bowler, and I think Suchit kept yelling at me. Those are good times. All right, so when you bowled, were you a spinner pitcher or more of a fast pitcher?
A fast pitcher.
Okay.
Fast pitcher. So
Did you ever get clocked for how fast you were bowling?
I didn't at that time.
That's not a thing back then?
It was not a thing back then.
What do you think? What do you think you were bowling at? Rough guess. 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour?
Probably 90 miles per hour.
That's moving.
Yeah, that probably easily 90 miles per hour.
Wow.
Because I was running really fast and then throwing and.
Oh, you might have been bowling at 100, right? Because you get to run how far? 20 yards?
Yeah, easily, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was really thin at that time. My hands were just zooming. So
Yeah.
it was really fast balls that I was throwing at that time. So.
You probably were bowling at 100 plus,
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
yeah.
All right. You went to school in India through college undergrad, or did you?
Undergrad. So I went to undergrad in India. I did my computer engineering. In college, I was probably studying less.
Where did you go to college?
It's a place called LD Engineering College. It's not nationally ranked, but regionally, it's number one basically.
Okay.
Right. So, and in 12th grade is a big thing there, and you study really hard, and then you get ranking and things like that, and then you get the choice of going to like different places. So I had the choice of going to like either the medical school or engineering. My parents really wanted me to be a like doctor, but I didn't want to be a doctor, so I went to like in computer engineering school.
So what was it about being a doctor that was not attractive to you?
I think two things. Somehow, like I thought that it was like a little bit more like repetitive thing, and then I had my cousin, like older cousin, who was a doctor, very successful doctor. He had like his own hospital and everything. But he always talked about like how boring the life was.
You have some prestige, but it's boring.
Yeah, exactly. He was making like a lot of money, but he says like I didn't want to become doctor. That's what like he will always talk about. So it's somehow like it was ingrained in me. So.
And what did computer engineering mean or look like back when you went to college for it?
Yeah, so I think like we studied like really like base in terms of like the microprocessors and like assembly language and C++ was a big thing then. Like it's no longer a big thing.
not really in vogue these days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I think Java was like fairly new at that time. And then all this like artificial intelligence, like neural networks, those kinds of things.
People were talking about those back then.
Yeah, they were talking about that back then. Basically, we didn't have like a lot of like practical applications that I was exposed to, but people were talking about that back then. Like I just talked to my son all the time that these are all the things that like we talked about then. Like we had the general conceptual understanding, but it's great to see that like now it's actually happening.
So you wanted to, I'm guessing here, tell me if I'm wrong, you wanted to problem solve through coding.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
And every problem is different, and you can develop a multitude of solutions to solve that problem.
Exactly, you're absolutely right. And I think that just helps in terms of like just the structural logical thinking, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
So when you graduated from college, did you work right away?
I actually went to master's MBA directly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that
what was the idea? What were you going to do after you got your MBA?
So I was going to go back into the private sector, but I thought like like one of those things like if I want to like study, I just want like study then finish the whole thing. So I did my computer engineering, then like went to MBA. And and also like simultaneously started like CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, which is a 3-year program. So I had like a very successful run at that time. So in MBA, in all 4 semesters, I was ranked like number 1 in the university, and then I also finished like my CFA at that time, and then went to work basically.
So you and I had similar roles at Capital One, and you were much more pedigreed than I was. All right, so now the math lines up for me, because you came over to the U.S. when you were 27.
Yeah.
You graduated college around the age of 22?
Yes.
And then you did a 2-year MBA and then a 3-year CFA.
Yeah.
And at what point did you start thinking about coming to the U.S.?
I think so. I worked there for about 2 years. And after about a year, I started thinking about coming to US basically because.
So you graduated college before you were 22.
So I did. So I did my MBA basically, right? So like my college, I finished my college, did my MBA.
Yeah.
And I finished my MBA in '96 and came here in like '98.
Got it.
So '96 and like now about a year I worked. I worked like 2 years, but after about a year, I started thinking about coming to US.
And what was it about the US that was attractive to you?
Yeah, I think one of those things where like I studied really hard, right, in computer and like finance, and then like you go to work, and then you use like 5% of your what you learned basically, right? So I was not satisfied.
And you thought that America would give you a much broader application of what you've learned.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
Did that end up being true?
Yeah, I think so. Still not like 100%, but much better than compared to what I was doing in India. So
okay, let me go back to school for a second. So the process to get selected, you end up being told you're eligible to select these schools.
Yeah.
And so the smartest kid your age in India at the time could choose any school.
Yeah.
And then once, and I'm using air quotes here, people can't see me, but this notion of the best school getting filled up meant it was no longer eligible for others to select it. Mm-hmm. The Harvard of India is IIM.
IIM, yes, yeah, IIM,
So,
and IITs, yeah.
Yeah. Well, IIT is the master's, or is it equivalent?
IIM is masters, IIT is undergrad.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I always had that flip for some
Right,
reason.
yeah.
So, did you have a desire to try to get into IIT?
I did not. I just want to stay more local, basically.
Okay.
Right?
So you went to the best place local.
Locally, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Nice. All right. So how old were you when you started learning English?
So in the fifth grade, fourth or fifth grade, English is a subject, right? So so there are schools where the medium of instruction is English. I was not in those schools. I was in called Gujarati medium, where my mother tongue is Gujarati, where so medium of instruction is in Gujarati. But you start learning English as a subject in third or fourth grade, basically, and then up to 12th grade, and all of the college education is in English now. So
And when you say English, is it British English, or is it English is English, and it's just the Brits have a different accent than Americans in the Southeast, kind of thing? It's the same language, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I think more British, English, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine there's some informal phrases that you would pick up with British English as opposed to American English.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So when you got here, what was your first when it really sank in what America was like? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I do remember the first thing that so I landed at Atlanta airport, and then some of my relatives came to pick me up, and I was they were driving me back to their home. And at that time, roads and infrastructure in India was not that great. So I first time remember thinking about looking at the speedometer and how fast the car was going, and not feeling that inside. So that was awesome. So and then and I went to school, and all this infrastructure at the colleges, and all these facilities and computer labs, and that was awesome, basically. Right?
Where'd you go to school when you got here?
University of Georgia. I went to UG.
And what was the master's program this time?
Yeah, actually, I was doing MBA again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you have to do it again?
I didn't have to do it, but I thought
you were actually going to school to learn.
Yes.
What a novel concept. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm being very serious when I say this. I went to college for two reasons. One, my parents expected me to, and two, I knew there'd be a piece of paper that would prove that I actually could learn a few things. But you actually did an MBA a second time because you wanted to learn.
Yes.
That is awesome.
That was nice.
More people. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Look, if the education is good, then why not?
I'm a big believer in education, right? Because I think there is this trend that is currently going on, which I'm not a big fan of, which is all this software companies hire people who have just finished, and they actually advertise also, right, and say, just learn like coding and come to us and work for us.
Yeah, finish high school at age 16 or 17 and code the rest of your life.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
So somehow I'm not a big fan of that.
Well, you're not going to be well-rounded.
Exactly,
If that's the path you choose, and you're not going to be worldly.
Yeah, exactly. Because the education is not just about earning money, right? It's the 4 year that you spend is you create a good baseline and the foundation for the rest of the life.
Yeah,
So,
and not just academically, to your point.
exactly. Yeah.
Socially, emotionally,
network,
psychologically.
everything.
Yeah.
Just a lot of learning there.
So was taking MBA courses at Georgia really different than an MBA course back in India?
A little bit different, not a whole lot, but a little bit different in the sense that a lot more focus on project-oriented work, basically, right? And versus what we had in India. And in India also there was some focus on the project-oriented work, but here it was a lot more project-oriented work. Right?
Were you the only Indian in the course at the time?
There were two more.
Two more, but everybody else was not Indian.
Not Indian. Yeah.
And did you feel included? Did you feel like you were respected, or was it not as smooth as you would have hoped?
Yeah, I think I have always been fortunate that I felt included, everybody was very just open and inviting me to different things, and just I just felt at home, basically, type of thing, right? And from that perspective,
That's great.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome.
I think that's I'd like to think that's typical, right? All the things that we've been hearing in corporate media, social media, you would think that everybody hates everybody else. But I think the reality is the overwhelming majority of people are very welcoming, very inclusive, and I would love to be telling those stories more than the ones of strife.
Yeah, and I think I almost felt that people were going out of their way to make sure that I I and the other two are feel included type of thing, so.
And I think that's true for most countries in most cultures.
Yeah.
I for some reason it just popped in my head that you won the dance competition. What kind of dancing are we talking about?
It's called Garba.
Okay.
It's Indian traditional dance from the place called Gujarat. So in India, so where I am from, Gujarat, So in India, it's very famous that this dance form that is in Gujarat is also at other places, right? It's called Garba. It's intense, and actually.
And there are professional dancers that do it.
Yes, yeah. And then you actually dance for a couple of hours actually, and it's exhausting, So, but if you enjoy it, basically, right? So.
You and your wife were in it to win it. It sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so you graduate.
You know me, once I go in something.
Yeah, you would rather die than not compete. So when you finished at Georgia, your second MBA, which I think I knew that about you, but I'd forgotten that. Did you get a job fresh out of finishing the MBA program?
Yeah, I got a job in Capital One. So I forgot to mention when in India also there are campus interviews, right? So the way it works is there is a interview week before you finish the college, and all these companies come to your campus, and the students actually rank those companies in terms of what day they come in. So that day one company, day two company, day three company type of thing, and depending on how much money they are offering, how many positions that they are offering, and then what's the track record of that company to come to that campus year after year.
This is MBA at Georgia, or is this back in India?
This was back in India basically, right? So. And so day one companies come in, and so I was hired on day one, right? And then by day three, all the entire class is hired basically majority of the time. So.
Were you hired by Capital One at the time?
So this was I was talking about in India.
Got it. So this is the job you got after your MBA in India.
MBA in India basically,
gotcha.
Right? So,
yeah.
But here also I got a job before I finished my MBA in Georgia. At Capital One. So
did Capital One recruit at Georgia?
They did not, but I had a friend who actually worked at Capital One, so I applied, and they invited me to the campus here, and I came here and interviewed, and they offered me the job.
So you've lived in two places in the States, the Atlanta metro area and the Richmond metro area.
Actually in Florida also. So so I came here for MBA, then I finished one semester. And then I thought because my wife was still in India. So I got married in December of 97. And after about 6-8 months of the marriage, I came here for study.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after finishing one semester, I wanted to bring my wife also over here.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, right. So, and that's why I said I'm going to work for a couple of years. And so I did an IT consulting work in Georgia and in Florida.
Okay.
So I lived in Florida also for about 2 years, and then went back to MBA and finished my MBA.
Got it. Okay.
So I had a lot of detours.
So by the time you started at Capital One, you were in your early 30s?
Early 30s, yeah. I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Early 30s, yeah.
Yeah. And how long were you at Capital One?
So I started in 2002 until 2013.
Okay. So out of you and I both know Gene Burke really well. Between Gene and me, who's your favorite? I'm kidding. You don't have to answer that.
That's a tough question. I mean, I'm a big Gene Burke fan, right?
I'm a big Gene Burke fan as well. I'll edit this out later, though. So what was your first job at Capital One?
Yeah, I was in a place called call center support group.
Okay.
What was it called? ICOS. So I was there for about 2 years.
I forgot about ICOS.
ICOS, yeah.
We love their acronyms at Capital One.
Exactly, yeah. So I was there, but it was a little bit a big transition for me, just because the way that happens in when you are really studying is somebody gives you a book and you read end to end, and then you know everything about that subject, right? And like you rely a lot more on like reading, versus when you go in like corporate world, it's like bits and pieces of information, right?
Yeah.
It's like, there's like one deck here and one procedure here, and people mention things in meetings and things like that. So you have to like just actually put pieces together. It's not like given to you like ready-made on a book or something.
Well, and the book has been vetted by really smart people, and Capital One has a ton of smart people, but not everything was vetted thoroughly.
Exactly.
So you're putting things together. You're like, I'm not sure this is accurate. This thing that I just learned yesterday.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah. So.
All right, cool. Let's go back to English. The language you were speaking when you were like 4 or 5 years old, I imagine, is dramatically different than English. Like
Exactly.
two different things.
Yeah, two different things.
Like not in the same category sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So picking up English was not a big deal though? Just because
No.
you're hearing it all the time and speaking it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not a big deal. At that.
And you can still speak your native language as
Yes,
well?
yes, exactly.
You speak it with your wife?
Yeah, we speak Gujarati. My son also speaks Gujarati. Like in home, we speak Gujarati basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. All right, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so for some reason, I think this is maybe a little bit. I shouldn't bring up the next topic, but there was a caste system in India, and you had said it's okay to talk about.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the history of the caste system and how it's broken down? I know there are four main castes, but there are offshoots of those four main ones as well. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there are like four different caste systems. So Brahmin, and then Brahmins, like their main focus is in terms of like doing like more like religious type of work and those kinds of things.
They're religious leaders,
Religious
effectively.
leaders, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's like Kshatriya, who are like warriors, right? So like their job is to like protect like people, and they're warriors. And then Vaishya is like they are more in the businesses, like different types of businesses,
Finance, accounting, that sort of
finance, accounting, selling, trading, those kinds of things,
Okay.
right? And then Shudras are like more manual type of work, basically,
Okay.
right? So I think like sometimes like the caste system is understood differently than what it really is. So caste system is not supposed to be by birth. It's about like type of work that you do.
So you could be born to Kshatriya parents, but end up being Vaishya.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
That's how it should be, but somehow that's not how it is, basically. Right?
So if you're born to Brahmin parents, you probably want to be Brahmin.
we want to be Brahmin, basically, right? So like, I think like that's how it generally worked. But like I think in my opinion, like the true sort of the foundation of the caste system is that it's not by birth. It's the type of work that you do, and that should be like you should be able to like transition from like one caste to another depending on what work you do, basically.
Yeah, and so if you're born to a religious father, but you really want to be a carpenter, you should be able to do that. But I imagine your religious father may not want you to go down that path.
Exactly, yeah. And I think like what happened was like this, in my opinion, like that's how the caste system was developed. But then like people put like artificial barriers, basically, right? And that things become like a lot more rigid, and it loses the the true ingredient about like what it is supposed to be about, right? And that just creates like this like barriers, right? So
Yeah, so if you want to do something, it's in your heart and in your soul. Those artificial barriers may prevent you from doing that,
Exactly.
and that's tough for a culture.
yeah, it is tough, and I'll be honest, like in some of the villages and where it's just really difficult to like just go from like one type of work to another type of work, and like there's
So your parents are Brahmin,
yes, yeah,
but the work you do is more Vaishya.
yeah. It's,
But the caste system is also not strong. Even within India, is not as strong as it was maybe 100 years ago.
exactly, yeah.
And if you are Indian by birth but live in America or Brazil or wherever, it's not really a thing.
It's not a real thing, basically, right? Because I think like even if you're in India, like in cities now, or even like the smaller villages, like I would say like it no longer exists. Like it probably like exists in like pockets somewhere, in some pockets, but it does no longer exist.
Every person I'd known from India, born in India, lives in America, was never afraid to talk to me about this, but it was always like there's a part of the history that's maybe not great, and I think you tapped into it when you mentioned artificial barriers.
Yeah.
That's not good for society to limit people.
Exactly. It just limits the growth of the society, right? So,
Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, so how do you spend your spare time these days? Because your son's out of the house, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's out of the
We'll talk about your son in a few minutes. So what do you do in your spare time these days?
Yeah, I like listen to music. I read.
Okay.
My wife and I go out for walk. I exercise and go out for watch movies and music shows and things like that. Right?
What kind of music?
I like Hindi music.
Okay.
I like Hindi music. So
is it more vocal than instrumental, or more instrumental than vocal?
More vocal than instrumental, I would say. Yeah, I would say.
All right, cool. Do you? This is a weird question. Are Bollywood films good these days? Right, because 30 years ago they were just imitating what was happening in Hollywood, but they're actually producing high quality stuff these days.
Yeah, this is really good films basically, right? So some of these films are really good films, and they bring the new innovative stories and new plots and all of that, right? So I watch Hollywood movies also, Bollywood. I like both, so.
When was the last time a movie was made about the 1983 cricket team?
Very recently. Very recently, actually, about 2 years ago. Yes.
Really?
Yeah, the captain of the team, his name is Kapil Dev, great guy, awesome guy. So this movie was about him, how he led his team, through the winning, basically, right? So he's an awesome guy, So I'm forgetting the exact numbers, but there was a cricket match before going to the finals with Zimbabwe, and I think India had lost probably 5 or 6 wickets in just maybe less than 20 runs. And then he comes in and he alone makes 175 runs.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. He just makes 175 runs. He just hits ball all around the ground, and nobody's able to take him out.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and India ends up winning. So.
Yeah, I mean, if he hits 20 runs instead of 175, they probably lose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is a very likelihood of India losing, but he comes in and just changes things around completely. So.
What's the average number of runs a batsman will get in a typical match?
I think they are 30, 35.
Okay.
So
he's at 175?
Yeah, he's 175. Yeah.
I'm having a tough time fathoming that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, inning that he played at that time. So.
Wow, that's crazy. And how old is he now?
He's probably in high 60s, early 70s.
Is he still in India?
Yeah, he's still in India.
I guess he's a hero, right?
Yeah, he's a hero.
He's probably one of the most famous people in India.
Yeah, he is. And he's a really good guy also, personally also.
So Indians over time have migrated all over the world. Mm-hmm. Is there something about the culture that says, hey, let's migrate, or is it something else that's driving migration?
I think it probably two things. The one is culture also, because I think previously also especially the state that I come from, is lot more focus on business. So and going outside and doing businesses. So I think they were years centuries ago they were going to Africa and different places and doing business and coming back type of thing. So it's in the culture to go out and explore different things and type of thing, right? So that's number one. And then number two is more practical reason is there are a lot of people in India, so
yeah,
a lot of competition.
How many children per family typically?
Now it's 2.
Okay.
But I think we have this right from the beginning, we have a very high population basically, right? So even if the per family number of children is in 2 range, it still keeps growing 2 to 3, and it still keeps growing.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Because you can't fit that many people in that limited space, right?
Yeah, it's there is always lot more people than the opportunities that are available. So.
Yeah, it's probably more economic than it is geographical.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even though there are parts of India that are not livable, right? A lot of people don't live in the Himalayas.
No, yes, absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there
okay.
are like parts where there are not a lot of people.
If you were going to go back, not to see family, but as a tourist, to go back to India, where would you go?
I like Himalayas, So yeah, I like that. And then like, and I like Bangalore, like South India also. There's kind of really good places to see.
Does the government say Bangalore or do they say Bengaluru now?
Bangalore now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bangalore. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because Bangalore, and the reason they made that distinction is because, why did they make that distinction?
Yeah,
or the
so
change?
I think the original name was Bengaluru, but then when British came in,
So it's getting away from the British influence.
British, yeah. So because like my city that I'm come from also is like, it's called like Ahmedabad, but the original name is like Ahmedabad. It's like Bombay is like British conversion of the name. The original name is like Mumbai.
Right.
So like it's not going back to like Mumbai type of thing, right? So
Yeah, I think I'd like to go to Bengaluru.
yeah, absolutely.
It's on the coast, right?
Yeah, so it's in the middle, but you can go to the coast.
Oh, okay.
basically.
But it's in the south.
It's in the south. Yeah, it's in the
Yeah.
south.
Did you ever go there for work?
Yes, from Capital One, I
Yeah.
went there like a few times. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great deal.
Yeah, exactly.
How far from where you grew up is Bengaluru?
It's quite far. I would say. I'm trying to like figure out like miles, probably like more than 1,000 miles.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh!
it's like,
So that's like driving halfway across the country.
yeah, further across the country. Yeah, exactly.
Did you see your family every time you went
Yeah,
over there?
every time I went to India, I went to like I went home a couple of days all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so we mentioned Gene earlier. You invited Gene and me to what Gene and I would call a party, I think, but it was actually Diwali.
Yeah.
And you were hosting.
Yes.
You and your wife were hosting, and Gene's wife and Gene plus my family of 5.
Yeah.
We were the only non-Indians there, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now I know what it's like to not be white in a very white setting, right?
yeah.
And it was awesome. I loved it. But explain Diwali to people that have not experienced it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Diwali is like the big best festival is India. It's called like festival of lights. So we put like a lot of lights outside our houses in India, and it's like the symbolic reason for like light is that it removes the darkness of ignorance and brings like light of knowledge, basically, right? So that's the concept. And there are 5 days of Diwali. So each day there is different things that happen. And like leading up to Diwali, which is the last day of the year, and the next day is the new year as per the Indian calendar, right?
Okay.
So families get together and like spend a lot of time together. Like we make food and sweets at home, and it's like vacation in the schools. And we also fireworks, basically, right? So it's just really good family time. Like we just spend like a lot of time with the family.
So what my family and I attended, was that day 5?
That was actually pre-Diwali, basically.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So we were hosting that on the occasion of like Diwali, but it was like before the 5 days started for
Got
Diwali,
it.
because we try to do that over the weekend and things like that, right? So,
Got it.
Yeah.
And so, how many times have you and your wife hosted something like that?
So at home, like the smaller parties we host, but the bigger one, like we hosted that's it was like quite a number of years. But we are actually thinking about like doing one more. Like it's probably going to be after Diwali now, but
Okay.
I think next few months. Yes.
Yeah, and I think Gene asked me a question like, "Hey, are we supposed to bring something?" And I said, "I have no idea, man." And what was the answer? Like,
No. Yeah. So I think like people sometimes bring things, but we just made it clear to everyone that you just come and enjoy. Like don't bring anything, basically, type of thing.
okay, all right. So you watch movies, whether they come out of Hollywood or Bollywood, or the UK or wherever. Do you watch talk shows ever? Like interview shows where they'll have 2 or 3 guests that come on?
I do sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So imagine you have your own talk show. You're the host.
Okay.
And you get to invite some people to be on your talk show.
Okay.
One can be female,
Okay.
one male, a musical act, and you can throw in a wild card, a 4th person if you want to. They can be alive or dead.
Okay.
They can be famous or not famous. They can be part of your family. It can be friends. It can be somebody you don't know. This one show only, you can try to make it entertaining, humorous, thought-provoking. It can be whatever you want it to be. Who are you inviting to be your guests?
Okay, so one male, one female.
Musical act, and then fourth one can be a wild card, anything you want it to be.
Okay, yeah. I think for male, I would invite. So does it have to be anybody that I know, or is
It can be famous. It can be anybody, live or dead.
Okay,
It can be somebody who lived hundreds of years ago.
right. I think male. I would like to invite Bollywood hero called Amitabh Bachchan. He's
Okay.
a very famous actor. He just turned 80 in the last few days. The reason that I want to invite him is he has been famous for many years, decades, and a very successful actor. But he's very humble. And it's one of those things when you're in public life, you make some mistake somewhere, right? And in terms of what you speak or what you do type of thing. And he's one of those he's so humble, he has not made any mistake.
Wow.
So I just absolutely amazing to me in terms of now how committed he is to his work, and at the same time now how famous he is, and at the same time how humble he is, basically, right?
It's a great combo.
Yeah, it's I saw him at Mumbai airport once. He was just walking by, and it was a total surprise to me. He is 6'3" or something.
Oh,
and,
wow.
and then just a very towering personality, and he's awesome.
Is he more famous than the cricket captain?
He is.
Okay.
He is actually more famous than cricket captain.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a good one. I think a lot of people will watch your show just with him alone.
Yeah,
You know,
because at the age of 80 also, he still works in movies, and he still gets lead roles, in movies, and so
nice.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right, how about your female?
Let me think about it. Let me just.
And you can skip the musical act if you want.
Yeah. So I think. I think I would invite Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi.
Okay.
She is no longer, but no more, and I think she was the first Prime Minister of India, and was Prime Minister for 10-15 years, something like that. A very strong iron lady, So
She was a force.
yeah, she was a force, So I think just learning from her about leadership. There are obviously, if you're in a political life, there are people who like what you do. There are going to be people who like you are not going to like what you do, type of thing, right? So there are going to be some controversial decisions also, so on and so forth. But in just leadership standpoint, she was in full control, basically, right? So
Very cool.
yeah.
All right, musical act.
Musical act. I keep back going to all Indian.
No, it's fine. If that's who you want to invite.
Yeah, so I think I would invite Javed Ali. So he actually recently came to Richmond.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we attended his show also.
Oh, that's cool.
He just comes from he used to actually live in a small hut. Yeah, so he's he was very poor growing up, and he is now very famous singer, very committed. I like his songs, and I would like to invite him and learn about what's his day to day looks like, and how does he practice, and what does he do to just have this kind of consistent performance and things like that.
How old is he now?
It's probably early 30s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he a decade and a half ago was living in a hut.
Yeah, he was. He actually says that he was living in a hut where if there is rain, then he cannot sleep because there is water coming down from the
Wow.
terrace. So
Yeah, it gives you perspective.
yeah, exactly. So
And I imagine it's he's quite humble.
yeah, he is.
As well.
He is, yeah.
Is that cultural for India?
I think most of the time, yes. So once sometimes people become successful and they want to just enjoy and spend time spend all their money. But I think majority of the people that I've seen, I think they are just stay focused on what they are good at and keep working, basically.
Yeah, and don't spend time celebrating too much.
Exactly, yeah.
Your own accomplishments.
Okay.
All right, your fourth guest can be anybody besides the three that you've already.
I almost wanted to say like Gene Berg because of all
No, what you need to in this show, you end up talking to the first three, and then you say, "And we have Gene Burke waiting in the back, but we've run out of time, so Gene can't come out today."
all the stories that he has, right?
He has a lot of stories. Yeah.
I remember like I was reporting into Gene, and every 2 years I would say, Gene, I'm bored, I need to do like something else. And then like he's a great leader, right? He would say, yeah, let me put in touch with like so and so who's like hiring. And then I would go and talk to that person, and then at the same time what he would do is like make some changes to my job so I stay. Remember like you and I like switched the roles.
Oh yeah,
that was awesome.
Oh yeah, that was fun. I mean, you got to keep it fresh.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Doing anything for more than a couple of years in a corporate environment gets pretty old.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So.
Yeah, Gene, you and I both reported to Gene. He's a very good boss.
Yes, he is. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. All right, so tell us about your wife and your son.
Yeah, so my wife, she's a teacher, part-time teacher, and I would say like very dynamic personality. So
I've met her a couple times. She has a very dynamic personality.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, and she focuses a lot. She did like a lot for my son in terms of like giving like exposure to like different things, and she actually put in like a lot of effort. So. Give you an example, like when my son was like in school, like middle school, we were looking for a robotics team for him to join, and we couldn't find any. So my wife and I just started like our own robotics team, and that continued for like many years. And I was there like just to help support the team, but the majority of the work was done by my wife, basically, right? So. And then she puts together like this Indian cultural dances and for kids, and there are like many parents that come to her and say, my kid is like doing this and this, or like this is interested in this only because of you, because you spend like time just putting together like different Indian cultural dances and like spending like a lot of time and effort and energy into like actually make that happen. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and my son, he finished his undergrad recently, last May, from Purdue University.
Yep.
He did like his computer engineering.
Did he do computer engineering because Dad did computer engineering, or he just has a natural affinity for it?
Yeah, natural affinity for it. And given that like he was exposed to robotics very early on, so he really liked it, and so he's since like middle school he's in technology. So he finished his like undergrad in computer engineering. So he did like double major, like under computer engineering and math.
If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Paul, can you do this really hard major and then find another hard major and do that too?" I'd be like, "Absolutely not. There's no way."
Yeah. Because I think he would have finished like in his college in like maybe like 2.5 years.
So he needed a second major to go beyond 2.5 years. We could have saved you a lot of money if he had only done the one major.
Yeah. But then I was encouraging him to like, because as I mentioned, like I think those 4 years are like very critical.
That's a great point.
Everybody,
yeah.
Like, I said like just spend like 4 years, there. Like even if you don't need to do like full workload, I think very important that you like spend like 4 years in college, basically, to your point, like socially network, all of those things, right? So that's why like he did the second major also. And then I was like a big believer in like just continuing the study, like doing the masters. So he is now at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Okay.
So he got into like masters and PhD combined program.
So wait a minute. You're obviously a smart person. Your wife is obviously a smart person as well. But like he's surpassing both of you, I think.
Yeah, he is.
Wow.
Yeah, he is. So he is. And he's like also, so he's like a master's and PhD program. I will see like whether he completes or not, but at least like he's complete like masters, right? So
I have a feeling he's going to complete both.
And then I think here he is. So there is like a place called like Punjab in India. So there is like different cultural dance there. It's called like Bhangra dance. So he was captain of his Bhangra team in Purdue.
That's cool.
So, yeah, so he likes to do like things outside of study also. So he stays like really busy.
Did he ever pick up cricket?
He did not. Yeah.
Yeah, because there probably aren't leagues when he was growing up as a 10-year-old.
Exactly. There are not many now, and like now I think they started some in the striker, where football.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think they have now they are coaching cricket also there in that club. So.
And when you say football, you're saying soccer.
Soccer, sorry.
Yeah.
Soccer. Soccer.
That's great. So he could end up anywhere in the world after he finishes school.
Yeah. So he likes to do computer, and so he's like in artificial intelligence, and he wants to apply that into like medical field. So,
Okay.
In neuroscience. So he did his internship at MIT in that field. So computer engineering and medical field.
So wait a minute. He graduated from Purdue, and then he did it. Was the internship while he was at Purdue, or just after?
While he was at Purdue.
Okay.
So he, at 3 summers. So first 2 summers he did internship at Google.
Okay.
And the 3rd summer he did at MIT. So
he's wickedly bright.
Yes.
He's a good kid too, right?
Yeah. Because it's very difficult to get like an internship in Google in first year of college, and he did. So.
I mean, so there's genetics played a part in it. He has smart parents. Nurturing from his parents plays a big part of it. Was there a third ingredient that led him to be this wildly bright?
I think once they start moving into like one direction, they just it seems to me that they just keep going in that direction basically.
Extreme focus.
Extreme focus, exactly. Extreme focus.
Yeah.
So
all right, that's cool. So he's going to do AI work.
AI work, yeah.
And try to make the world better through medical advances.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so you've been in Richmond for a while now.
Yeah, 20 years now.
Do you think you're going to stay in Richmond, or when you retire someday, you might move to wherever in the world?
I think I'll probably go back to India.
Okay.
So I think at least part of the year type of thing, right? So I may live in India for part of the year, or some time, and then come back and live here type of thing.
You still have family in India.
I do. So actually, my 2 sisters and my brother, my mom, everybody's in India. So.
Yeah. And none of them wanted to leave India.
No, they didn't want to live in India.
Do they think you're strange for leaving?
I think I've always been just trying. They encourage me to just always try different things, explore new things, and I'm the youngest one, so they're just letting me do whatever I want.
Yeah, I have 3 kids. I don't pay attention to the third one as much as I pay attention to the first 2.
Yes.
And my 3rd child won't listen to this, so it's fine. Well, Nikhil, I've always told people that you're one of my best coworkers I've ever worked with at Capital One, and I was there a long time. We had a lot of fun back in what was it, 15 years ago now?
I say the same thing. So my son knows who is Paul and who is Gene.
We had a great time.
Yeah.
If I could capture those days in a bottle and then not replicate it necessarily, but kind of create the same vibe and the same culture, I'd have a blast working all the time.
Yeah, I know. I remember every Tuesday or some day I'm forgetting. We go out and eat Indian food. Right?
Yeah. When Gene loved ice cream, so we got ice cream.
Ray's ice cream or one of those things.
Ray's.
Yeah. I still remember the awesome time.
We had a really good time back then. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Nikhil, I appreciate you doing this. I assume your wife will listen to this once it's
absolutely.
out. Will your son listen to it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, since they're going to listen to it, what are their names?
My son's name is Yug. My wife's name is Sejal.
Yeah. Tell Sejal I said hello, please.
Absolutely, I'll do that.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah. This definitely feels like center of the universe. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.